Welcome to the Four Visions Market Podcast, a space built on the principles of integrity and reciprocity. Together, we will engage in thought-provoking conversations about plant medicines, why these plants are coming out of the rainforests, jungles, and mountains after thousands of years, and what it means to be in right relationship with the ancestral wisdom cultures and guardians of these traditions. I'm your host, Mariah and Giselle, founder and director of Four Visions Market. This podcast is the natural evolution in our commitment to providing you, our tribe, with incredible resources to support you on your healing journey through plant medicines. Welcome home. Welcome back, Four Visions family. I'm joined today by Giselle World, medicine woman, performing and recording artist, and composer. Giselle is known for infusing ritual and indigenous culture into electronic music. Through her travels and love of ceremony, she's created a soundscape of unique, conscious textures and fusion of tribal electronic medicine music, whilst curating an alchemical experience honoring the elements and inspiring healing through powerful use of indigenous chants and ancient mantras. Giselle is also recognized for her musical healing contributions in the medicine community via singing and her flute work, accompanying various different Native American tribes, organizations, and ceremonies. Giselle opens up today about her musical journey, as well as how the plants have accompanied her in the process of self-discovery and her own empowerment. We had a beautiful conversation that we get to share with you about vulnerability, sharing our gifts with the world, creating the lives that we want to live, and coming out of victimhood and into victory. We also talk about some of her new upcoming projects and the evolution of her musical career in parallel with her spiritual growth. The teaching that we are always evolving, growing, and changing, and that we have full permission to be all that we are. Enjoy today's special episode, and thanks for tuning in. P.S. If you've been enjoying the podcast, would you please take a moment to leave us a rating and a review? Thank you so much in advance. This helps us to continue producing great content for you. And now, on to today's episode.
A quick word from our sponsors before we begin this episode.
When working with powerful plant allies and teachers, we're given a new awareness and a deeper understanding of ourselves, the world around us, and the energies in our lives. One of the most challenging parts of working with plant medicine is integrating the experience. In ceremony, our plant teachers show us the path, but it is then our responsibility to take action in our daily lives. Mushroom microdosing has helped me tremendously in this process, allowing me to keep messages and insights from ceremony in the forefront of my awareness. This is key in the integration process because it helps us to bring the technology of the ancient wisdom we receive through ceremony into lasting, sustainable transformation and change. If you are looking for the right place to source high-quality, ethical, made-in-prayer mushroom microdoses, look no further. Four Visions Market is proud to endorse Connect Chocolate in their 30-day microdose protocol. Visit connectchocolate.life and use the code FVFamily for 10% off your first order. According to a journal published by the National Library of Medicine, individuals who microdose describe a wide variety of psychological benefits, including enhanced creativity, increased energy, improved social ability, sharper focus, stronger analytical thinking, more positive mood, improved memory, and increased mindfulness and general sense of well-being. Connect Chocolate was founded by a member of the Four Visions community, and their mission is to cultivate kinship with earth and spirit. This 30-day at-home treatment will take you on a journey to support your emotional, spiritual, and mental well-being. Go to connectchocolate.life or visit the link in our show notes. And remember to use the code FVFamily for 10% off your first order. Well, welcome, Giselle. Thank you so much for being on the show today. I'm so excited to get to connect with you and have this opportunity to drop in and dive into some beautiful topics about all about music and this path and what it means to cultivate our authentic medicine, which I watch you doing and admire you. It's been a pleasure to watch your journey unfold, and I'm really feeling excited and blessed to be connecting with you today in this way. So thank you and welcome.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to finally be able to have this interview with you. And as we were talking a little bit before we hit record, just how we've been wanting to connect for a while now, for a couple of years. And so it's really wonderful to finally be able to share on this beautiful platform that is For Visions. I've also been following some of the work. I know that For Visions is so much more than a shop. It's offering even some concerts sometimes and things like this. So it's really wonderful. And I've been supporting also from the side, like just sending people over to your shop when they ask me, where can I find, a shaker, a rattle, or Habib pipe or anything. I'm like, well, check out For Visions. They seem to have a lot there. So yeah, it's nice to finally make this happen.
Thank you so much, love. Yes, it's so beautiful the ways in which we're able to weave together in this world now. And that's one of the blessings, I think, of technology that we can just celebrate, because the connections that come through, and especially on this podcast, just the opportunity to be connecting with so many beautiful people on the path. It's such an honor and so fun. So I'm really looking forward to introducing you to our community and getting to hear a little bit more about your story. And probably many people are already familiar with you, but for those who are not, I would love to hear a little bit more about who you are and, you're a little bit about your journey, your path, how you came to be walking the path that you're walking. Just introduce us a little bit to Giselle World.
There's so much. So I'll try my best to sum it up and just kind of start with some of the basics to the beginning. Where I grew up, I was raised in Miami. I was actually born in Washington, D.C. That was kind of just something that happened by chance because my dad was traveling for work and my mom was pregnant, and then she went into labor while they were in Washington, D.C. But to this day, I don't really know D.C. so well. They moved to Miami shortly after, so I feel like I was born here. I was raised here in Miami, and my family is of Nicaraguan descent. So both my parents are from Nicaragua. I come from a Mayan and Mexican lineage, and I grew up with more of those traditions than I could appreciate or see really until I got in the medicine path. Like how much I already knew because I grew up with it. So I was blessed to also be raised with my grandmother, and she was with us until about 3 years ago. Like she left right before COVID, which was we were really sad to lose her, but also I'm so grateful that she didn't have to live through COVID because that would have been too hard for an elderly person. And she just taught me and my siblings, my family, so much about our culture without making it like I'm gonna teach you about your culture. Just in her being, like her making cacao at home, that was all the time. Like we had cacao, especially on birthdays and Christmas. And so I grew up like learning how to make drinks of cacao and toasting the beans and peeling them and, handmade tortillas and as they call them, nacatamales, like so many native drinks and sounds and things that they just were part of my upbringing. And now it's funny because all these things are kind of like trending and I always had them around. And so it's wonderful to be able to continue to deepen my connection with her and my ancestors through the medicines as they came into my life, even though I was raised in Miami. And so when I was growing up in Miami, I was always very musical. My family loves music, and Both my parents, on some level, played music. They were not professional musicians, but they loved music and they studied some. And I have an older brother. I have two younger siblings as well. We're four, but my older brother and I were the main ones that went for music. So he actually started with the piano and then the violin, and today he's a maestro, like a musical director for opera in Minnesota. And I was right behind him. We're only like a year and 9 months apart with classical music. So I also studied classical music since I was about 3 years old, like more speaking. I was already singing. I loved music. It was very natural for me. I was singing since I was speaking. And then as soon as I could get into any kind of singing programs, which were entering elementary school, I joined the chorus, and it became very apparent early on that I had a musical ear. And so my musical teachers would always kind of place me in the front or push me to do things that they didn't necessarily ask the other students, because many of them were just there because it was part of school. Some liked it, but as far as having a natural talent or gift for music, it was evident early on. So I really enjoyed it. So I continued with singing. And then the flute came later on, but the flute was always sort of there. As far as, I had someone ask me yesterday, when did I know I wanted to play the flute? And it was interesting because it was always. Before I knew what the flute looked like, I knew what it sounded like. And I loved the sound of it. And I knew I wanted to play it as soon as I was old enough to be able to hold a flute in my hands. I was waiting for that. That was around 10 years old when my parents finally said, okay, you can pick up an instrument. I was already seeing my older brother, playing violin and playing piano, and I was just itching to get my hands on the flute. So as soon as I started learning the flute, it just took off. And singing actually took a back seat for a while. When I turned about 15, I suddenly became very afraid of singing in public, like extreme stage fright. And I found myself hiding behind the flute. It felt less personal. So I focused on the flute, and I ended up continuing pretty seriously with that, studying classical music. I have a master's degree in music performance with flute and a minor in graduate studies of fine arts. So that led me to becoming a professor in a university. So that's something actually a lot of people don't know. I still am a professor in a university. I've been teaching at the university level for about 11 years or so. And I teach humanities, which is the study of all the art forms and ancient temples, and spirituality, not necessarily part of it, but I incorporate it into my course. So classical music was just always there. And when I graduated from my master's in New York, I came back to Miami, and that's when the medicine came in. And it was a huge surprise for me because I had never heard of plant medicine before it came. It just came and then it took over. It wasn't something like many people have heard of peyote or ayahuasca or mushrooms for a while, and then at some point they decide I want to go try it. That wasn't the case. I had no idea. I never heard of peyote before. I never heard of ayahuasca. In fact, in the early months of hearing about it, I couldn't even remember how to say the word correctly. I kept messing it up and making jokes that I would never make today, now that I have such an immense respect for ayahuasca. So yeah, when the peyote, which was my first medicine, came into my life, peyote brought the singing back. It was like, you have to sing, you have to sing. And I was hearing this voice, like, you have to sing. And I was still very much afraid of singing in front of people. And then I, at some point, was called to put together a ceremony for my family, a prayer. I was organizing it. And as they call that position is the sponsor. So I was sponsoring the ceremony. So at that point, I understood that I needed to sing, because it was part of the ritual. And if I was the sponsor and taking on that role, then I needed to contribute. And I needed to contribute through the chants. So I learned a couple of chants and prepared them. And when the moment came, I sang for the first time. It was the first time my parents saw me sing since I had quit when I was 15. It was very emotional for them because they loved my singing and they never wanted me to stop. And so it was very healing for all of us to have that comeback. And I stayed singing ceremonially only for a couple years until I started to receive from many people that I needed to do it outside. I had already, after graduation, I had already started doing a fusion with electronic music. I always felt a connection beyond classical music to more fusion. I love fusion, eclectic, and also more production. In the classical world, it wasn't very much of theatrical production, and there was a part of me that always felt inclined towards that. I wanted to produce shows. I wanted them to have more going on, and I wanted there to be multimedia. I wanted there to be dance and video and all these things. So I had already started exploring that when I left my master's program. So I was playing basically electronic music with the flute. I wasn't singing yet. And then at some point, I was getting called to sing more and to bring what I was doing in ceremony on the stage. And it was very stressful because not only was I still overcoming my fear of singing publicly, but I also felt concerned that I would disrespect the medicine or the chants. But my own teachers, the elders that I was studying deeply with and working with, were encouraging me to do it. They were saying that I needed to do it because I was a bridge. And they gave me their permission, and they were there for some of those early concerts that happened here in Miami and in Ibiza and later in Bali. So it's funny now because I'm known as a singer primarily and a world performing artist. I had to do a lot of healing to do that, which is why I now teach a vocal healing apprenticeship program, because I know what it is to have fear around sharing your voice, even when you actually have it. Because I always was a musician, I always could sing, and yet I had this block that came from a fear of being seen, actually, in some ways. And so that's kind of how I arrived to this point. The medicine really pushed me there and changed my life. It gave me a new direction from where I was going, where I thought I was going, and it just took over. When the medicine came into my life, it just took over. It was not subtle. I never heard of peyote, but when he came in, it was like, this is me, I'm here. And then grandmother ayahuasca came, and they just like, and for a while there was no work, there were no shows. It's like the block was there, and they said, no, mija, you're going to sit here and you're going to learn. You're just going to sit here at the altar and you're going to sing and you're going to learn and do your work. And that was a very beautiful, very intense boot camp process that gave me so many gifts that opened up for what people know as Giselle World now, that music that is fully inspired by the plants and the work of the medicine, and also community. Yeah, Giselle World, that name came because it was actually, it is a name that I feel chose me because before I became Giselle World, I was known as flute trance because I was only playing the flute and I was doing it in an electronic format. And people would say that my flute was entrancing. So it was a name that I used for some years, and that was the brand. And then when I started singing, I had some people, my producer primarily, who was encouraging me to change the name and show more of my identity and bring Giselle in there. So we had decided that I would just be Giselle. There was not going to be anything else, just Giselle. And when I was rebranding, I looked for a new website, and my friend and I were doing the search, the one who built my website, and we found Giselle.world. And I loved it. It felt really good because I was always traveling all over the world, and it felt in alignment, in resonance with my global work, my sharings, my offerings. And so we purchased the domain and built the website. And from there, all the gigs that I started getting invited to, all the shows I was getting booked for, when I would arrive, they would write Giselle World. And I was like, that's not the name. But then I saw it so many times that I was like, I guess that is the name. That's what people were calling me. That's how they were writing it. So I just decided to let it be, and now it's what it is. And I feel so grateful and so blessed to have arrived to this point in my life where people know my music and appreciate it and feel any kind of healing or whatever they feel when they listen to it. So that's, in a nutshell, what I could say.
Hmm. Thank you so much for sharing, and so beautiful just to hear some of the different reflections on your journey and how everything has woven together for you. I imagine being a musician in that capacity, like there's nothing more fulfilling than being able to share our gifts and to be able to share our music in that way and to have it touch people's hearts. And yeah, it's also with the medicines, it's like I've heard this story so many times now of the medicines awakening the voice and awakening the expression of prayer. And it's so beautiful the way the medicines ask us to pray and the way that they activate this desire within us to express beauty. And the voice is one of those core formats that we have to express the beauty. And it's not just with the voice, but also dance and music and movement, expression in all of its forms. But specifically with the way the master plants call us forth to the altar and awaken this part within us. And each person's process is unique within it, but there is a deep healing. And I think that's also the collective voice and the collective artistic expression has been so suppressed in our society. And so when we come back to the ceremony, when we come back to the altar, being able to reconnect with that is very healing for people. And I think many people will resonate with that story that is yours, but is also so many of ours as well. We'll take a short break from the conversation to announce our giveaway winner for today's episode. Today's lucky winner is going to be winning a bottle of our Abundant Harvest Flower Essence. Harnessing the power of divine balance, harmony, and change, we created our Abundant Harvest Flower Essence during the portal of the fall equinox, a powerful time for tending to our inner and outer gardens. This loving combination will help you connect with the prayer of abundance and the celebration of life's many gifts and blessings. This essence was designed to support you in the energies of fall and autumn and to support in the reflection process, to look upon your life as though it were a garden. It is a prayer of thanksgiving. This essence will aid in a good harvest and preparation for the cooler, darker months ahead. We chose each sacred ingredient in this flower essence with reverence and care. These special essences carry unique powers which become amplified when they are combined to help you fill your spirit with gratitude, wisdom, and restore internal balance. It includes the essence of chrysanthemum to open our hearts to the positive aspects of transition, the essence of goldenrod to foster perseverance, focus, and approach new challenges with positivity and excitement, as well as the essence of coquindo seed, a sacred, rare Amazonian seed for abundance and heart opening. And then it also has the tiger's eye crystal essence to wash away negative energies, awaken confidence, and enhance spiritual awareness. Working with flower essences is one of my favorite ways to connect with plant medicine. So really encourage you to check it out if you are not familiar with this flower essence or the rest of the flower essences in our line. And our winner for this week's giveaway is Samarita Q, who writes, I love Mariah's energy and the way that she interviews her guests. I look forward to new episodes each week as her guests are always medicine people on the path that show up with authenticity and deep reverence for the beautiful plants of Pachamama. What I love most about this podcast is the genuineness and heartfelt commitment to bringing Indigenous knowledge and wisdom to the world. Sending so much love and look forward to continuing to listen to new episodes each week. Samarita, thank you so much for taking the time to write such a loving review. Your feedback helps us to continue making great educational content and resources to support our For Visions tribe. Congratulations on winning this week's giveaway. Please email us at thepodcast@forvisionsmarket.com to coordinate the delivery of your free bottle of our Abundant Harvest flower essence. To enter the ongoing raffle, all you need to do is write an honest review of the podcast either on iTunes or YouTube. Google Podcast, Spotify users, please hop over to iTunes or YouTube to leave your written review. And that's it. Each week we'll announce a new winner, read their honest review on the show, and give away some awesome products. And now back to today's episode. So one of the things that I think, again, is really universal and a lot of people can relate is this process of courage in vulnerability. And you touched on it a little bit in your process of sharing your music and the evolution and unfoldment. And I feel like I want to ask you to deepen on that topic because ultimately, on the path as we go evolving and growing in our commitments to this work and to life itself, we're constantly being asked to step up and to share our authentic medicine and this prayer that we have with the world. And that takes so many different forms. For you, it's been through your music and your offerings in that capacity. But this process of overcoming our fears of being vulnerable and sharing who we are in all of our authenticity, it's something that is such a study. And, I think that it's been a big part of your evolution as an artist. And I'm very curious to hear, whatever you feel called to share in that regard of, the evolution of trusting and really stepping into the service that's being asked of us and the sharing of yourself in this way, literally on stage, if for someone who experienced tremendous fear of the voice, being able to go on to that stage, that is the epitome of, really stepping into this courageous vulnerability. And I think we're all needing that and craving that this time in the world. And it's being asked of us more and more, right? To those of us who are really devoted and dedicated to this path of healing. So whatever you feel called to share on that topic, I would love to hear.
It's a path that I find that we all need to embrace more because it's the only way to really being and finding our authentic self and our authentic voice. And the more that we do that for ourselves, the more we're also doing it for others. And if we could meet each other more and more in that vulnerable, authentic self, that truth, I feel like the world really would be a much more harmonious place. Because so many of our issues, I find, in humanity have to do with people not willing to be vulnerable and share what they desire, what they've been through, so then it becomes a game of competition and ego, and then at any cost hurting one another or hurting the earth. So I like to say that I do appreciate that I see more and more people embracing this, including the masculine, who have been for so long shut down on being vulnerable. And it's so important for the healing of the collective that we all embrace that, because women do tend to be more vulnerable, but it's also like, how are we being vulnerable? And in sharing our voice is everything, because that's what makes us different from the other species here, is that we have language, that we have our voice to communicate language. And then there's so many other ways to express vulnerability in that include the arts, music, and these kinds of things. And so my own journey has been vulnerability comes hand in hand with opening our hearts, right? So that's in large part what the medicine did for me. It was just opening my heart to myself, to loving myself enough to speak those things that were happening, the truth, to being vulnerable, and allowing myself to be heard and seen and supported. And in turn, that also gives so much to other ones who bear witness to this, because it helps them feel okay to do it too. And so the more we do that, the more heart-centered communication we actually have, and therefore a better humanity. As we said, the journey to me singing publicly on stage was pretty intense. It took a lot just to sing in ceremony, and then at some point I got very comfortable. I don't know, I shouldn't say very. I was never very comfortable, but just I got more comfortable singing in the ceremonial setting. And part of the reason why is because I felt that people were much more heart-centered and open because of the medicine, so they were more forgiving on the imperfections of my voice, which is nuts. Because in reality, most people in a ceremony with plant medicine, as they're doing their healing work, are not thinking about that at all. But because I came from a classical training, I had so much judgment about my voice, and I had this ridiculous standard because I studied alongside incredible vocalists that dedicated so much time, so many hours training their voice for opera, which is of the most difficult type of music to sing, or jazz. And then I was also comparing it to the level of flute playing that I had, which was not fair because I did take the time to study and train my flute on a level that I had not dedicated to my voice because I had stopped singing for so long. So in my mind, I was thinking, if I can't sing on the level that I play my flute, I don't want to do it. I felt embarrassed to do it. I was such a harsh critic that I couldn't even see the point. I was completely missing the point, which I later understood was that it's not about the perfection, it's about the offering and the medicine that's behind each and every single person's voice. And when I would sing in ceremony, even though I felt that it was imperfect and it wasn't what I wanted to hear, people loved it and resonated and felt moved by it because they were feeling and receiving the medicine that was behind my voice. And I could not appreciate that for a while. I was very stuck in the classical training. I continued to sing because I was being asked to. And when I was asked to sing publicly for the first time in front of a large crowd, it was very, very frightening for me. So I had met a couple of guys in Ibiza that were music producers and DJs and pretty incredible musicians in ceremony. And when they heard me sing in ceremony, they were really inspired and were trying to convince me that I should bring that to the stage. I didn't feel ready to do that. I was very comfortable performing on the flute, but they insisted, and so kind of out of inspiration of the moment, we started working on a track together. They had brought their recording equipment. Some of these artists are kind of known in the conscious dance music scene, like Ryo, Walker Barnard, and a couple others. The man who produced the album for Nessie Gomez also. And we started collaborating on a song that ended up basically becoming the foundation for what later was released as Tribu, which was the name of my first album, full album, and my hit track at that time. And when I started writing what became Tribu, Originally, that track was only going to be flute. It was never going to have the Icaro or vocals in it. They pushed me and convinced me that I needed to be there and to record it. And so we sort of started recording a version of it in that moment. And then later, they invited me to Bali to perform for Bali Spirit Festival. I had no intention in my mind to sing at Bali Spirit Festival. As far as I knew, I was just going to play the flute on the stage and do some version of what we had started in Ibiza and some other things I was writing, and also just collaborate with them in their music. I was never going to sing. And right before the set started, they brought a vocal mic for me to sound check my voice. And I was like, why? I have my flute mic, I'm not singing. And they were like, yes, you are. And I was like, no, I'm not. I'm not singing. And they got actually like angry with me. And they were like, you're going to sing, so get ready. And they put the mic there and people were arriving. And then the track started and I was forced to sing Tribu in front of, I don't even know how many hundreds of people. And honestly, it was horrible. I was so unbelievably uncomfortable. I did not feel that I sang well at all because I was way too nervous. My throat got dry and I tried to just hide behind the flute. And then it became like a whole jam and it was pretty crazy. And I was just there and I was trying to just kind of mask how I felt. And by the end of the set, I left there in tears. I was absolutely mortified. I felt like I had been ambushed. I was so angry at them for putting me on the spot in that way without preparation. And they were just like, they didn't understand because they didn't see what I saw. They saw someone who was ready to take it on and I wasn't. Fortunately, there was another festival just days after that, also in Bali, called the Air Fest. And I was meant to do another show there. So I mentally prepared. I knew now what they were expecting. And I just was like, okay, well, if I'm being forced to sing on stage, I better get good at it quickly because I only have 3 days and I need to nail this. And I can't have a repeat of what happened. So I prepared vocally, I prepared mentally, I prepared emotionally, and I got on that stage again. And on that second show at the Airfest, it was a whole other thing. I couldn't even believe it. It was like, I just pretended that I was in ceremony and I rocked it like I did in ceremony. And there were so many people singing along. It was so unbelievable that it was the beginning of something. I continued to train my voice after that and just remember what it was like to sing. And before I knew it, the album that I was creating at that time, I had just started it, that I thought was going to be a flute album. It became like a vocal album. And then it took off. I never expected any of that to happen. I didn't expect Tribu to do so well. And I didn't expect all the invitations that I got to sing in Greece and Ibiza and so many other parts of the world. And I just continued trusting the prayer. And so, yeah, I had to be very vulnerable and share, before I was ready to. And I think that hand in hand with what you were asking about vulnerability is the trust. We have to trust and surrender and trust all the time, because that was something that I was really not only being asked to do, I felt forced. And then once I embraced it and I trusted, okay, well, there's something here. There's something I'm being asked to offer. So let me stop fighting it and trust this process. And at the same time, which I find is really important, is that when we find that we are being called to do something, is show up for it. And so if that means training, if that means discipline, if that means hiring coaches and teachers or cleaning up or whatever it is that we have to do, is like really show up for it. So that's what I did. I had to show up for it because it's, in my case, it was like I'm being called to do this in front of a lot of people. And I had a very high standard of musicality that I wanted to meet myself that I didn't feel I was able to. So Um, it was like trusting I'm being called forth for this. Okay, I'm going to show up for it. And then everything continued to unfold. And I'm in that again now. I'm being called to trust and surrender to a lot of things that I didn't really expect. I was sharing with you earlier, and I know a lot of people who follow me are aware that I had a really tragic accident earlier this year, and I lost a very dear friend of mine before my eyes, and I thought that I was right behind him in this flash flood that we got caught in a river, and I didn't think that I was going to survive that. I got rescued right on time. Two men that I didn't know, strangers that were hiking down that trail, they just came right on time, and they were determined to pull me out because it was not easy. It was not easy, and they managed to pull me out just in time, and I survived, and my friend didn't. And so I've been called to surrender and trust every day, because every day I'm still there. Like, why did this happen? It's been very difficult.
I just want to first acknowledge, what you were sharing, Giselle, and really my prayers have been with you, your community, your brother who transitioned earlier this year, and really just holding all of you that went through that experience and a lot of love and prayers and blessings to integrate that. And I think when we have near-death experiences, it's like the ultimate call to value our lives and give thanks and praise for this precious gift. Our internet got cut off for a second there, but here we are, we're back. So, Giselle, thank you so much for sharing about the evolution of your music journey. It's so inspiring and beautiful to hear all the many different nuances and layers that, play a part in the evolution of a prayer, the cultivation of a prayer, and then ultimate surrender. Some of these themes that we're discussing have me feeling called to ask you to share a little bit more about your spiritual path and your work with your spiritual work and what that has unfolded to be. And then also on that same line, how your relationship to creator, life, nature, the path of the plants has supported you in different phases of your life, different challenges and moments of tremendous growth and expansion.
It's been a very beautiful and interesting journey. It's also been, in some ways, quite long without realizing, because when I think about my spirituality, I cannot think about it or the beginning of it without thinking about my mom, because I always say that my mom was my first guru. My mom was always very different her from the people that she grew up around, that she was with. My family's from Nicaragua, and she grew up in Nicaragua in a very small town where they had mostly farms and land, estates, this type of thing, and small schools. Everyone knew everyone, and a lot of families growing up there, and not a lot of resources, really, even though at that time my mom's family was on the wealthier side of the town. That didn't last very long, and so, anyway, there were still like quite limited means, and somehow in that small town where people didn't travel so much and have such a global worldview, she found yoga. She found it through books in a library at the age of 13. And along with a couple other friends, they started to self-study and teach themselves about yoga. And in a very kind of traditional way, because it was really through reading the books and studying about yogic philosophy, which I find is more and more rare today, because people have taken yoga to be another fitness practice. And it's powerful in that way as well, but it's not the original way. There's so much more depth to yoga than the movement itself. It's so much of the philosophy and the way that we live and the breathing. And so that's what she was learning at the age of 13. So that in itself already made her quite different, and in the eyes of her people that she was around in that town, very strange. And though she still grew up in a very religious background, very, very Catholic, over the years, she maintained this connection to other forms of spirituality. She had an awareness that there was something more. She continued to study yoga and went on to become part of a yoga school. And so growing up, I always remember my mom practicing yoga. She would do sadhana every morning. She would wake up around 4 or 3. And I slept with my mom when I was little because my parents were separated. So I would always wake up in the middle of the night and see her on the mat doing her meditations and her breathing and her exercises. And it became so normal that when I would wake up, I would expect to see it, and it was comforting, like, oh, there she is doing her regular practice. So somehow I grew up with that, and I wasn't ready to understand it. And at some point, she pulled away from the church. She didn't feel called to be there. She kind of realized that she was just following the motions of other people, of her family, of tradition, but it didn't resonate anymore. And most of us didn't resonate with that, my father included. And so it was like just a lot of force to get everyone to go to church. And at some point she realized why are we doing this? And once she freed herself from that, she continued to open herself more to other forms of spirituality, and she always talked about it. And so I didn't know how important that was going to be in my life, but there was so much information that she taught me, and I was one of the most receptive of her children. I'm one of 4, and yeah, I wasn't ready for the information, but it was there. And so at some points in my life, when I was in my mid-20s, I had gone through a very, very severe, deep depression. I dealt with depression on and off since I was very young. But at the age of like 24, 25, I was living in New York. I had left home to do my master's in New York. And it was such a difficult transition that I fell into a super deep depression, and I attempted to commit suicide. And I failed at it. And I survived through what felt at that time like the assistance of angels, because it made no sense how I was able to, in the state of mind that I was in, call for help. But there was like something else that used my body, my hands, to use the phone and dial a number that I never dialed before and call someone for help that was able to help me. It was truly a miracle, and it was so important. And I have no problem sharing about it because it was crucial to everything that was coming. So at rock bottom was what began my awakening. So at that point, I went back to my mom and I said, I'm ready. Like, I'm finally ready. Whatever it is you have to teach me, I'll do it. I'll read anything. I'll go to any class. I'll study with whoever. I'll listen to any audio. Whatever it is you think I should do, I'm ready. I can't continue living like this. So she began giving me different things that she thought would help me at that time. And the first teacher that was significant and perfect for me in that timing, and I still revisit, and it lands differently in other moments of my life, was Abraham Hicks. And helped me so much to understand that emotional ladder and climb up that emotional ladder. And so after doing a good amount of work with Abraham Hicks and recollecting myself and beginning a healing journey and learning how to shift my mindset to create the life that I actually wanted, I ended up coming back to Miami and meeting some people that I would work with for a while that had gotten deep into the work of the Landmark Forum. So that was also very crucial for me because that was like my first ceremony, but without plant medicine. It was so intense. and it was very life-changing. It's not something I would go back to now, but it served its purpose at that time because I had a tremendous amount of judgment and prejudice around so many things that especially related to anything that was mind altering. I had never in my life until now, I still have never tried a drug, like a recreational drug. I've never taken a pill for fun, ecstasy, or these other ones I'm not even so familiar with. Like, I've heard of Mali, which I think is the same thing as ecstasy, LSD, all these party things, or cocaine, all these things that were quite prominent in Miami, especially having been raised here. And very much a party girl in my days. I definitely spent a lot of time in the clubs, but I never felt called to take anything. For me, alcohol was more than enough, and my body never accepted alcohol really well. So I was never a big drinker because my body couldn't take it. I was too sensitive. I still am. So to to get to where I could hear about peyote and understand that it was not a drug, that it was a medicine, and that there was something healing and good about it, that it was a spirit, I had to go to Landmark because it was only Landmark that trained me to not make stories, to not create judgments, to allow myself to be open and feel what actually resonates and trust. There were so many layers to what I learned there. And so shortly after I had completed the Landmark Forum, within the year, I think I heard about peyote for the first time. And when I started hearing about peyote, it was really only good things that I heard, and I was on officially now like on a spiritual and healing journey. So I was open. I felt like it came to me because I was supposed to work with this to help me. And my first peyote ceremony changed my life. Like I literally have never been the same since. That first ceremony was very uncomfortable. I didn't like it so much, to be honest. And I thought that I would never go back. I felt like, okay, I get it. There's something beautiful happening here by the morning. I felt like, yeah, I can see that there's something meaningful happening here, but I don't think I'll ever come back. And I went home and I went to sleep. And the next day I woke up and I was just different. Something changed and everything changed from those days on forward. I had never been an early bird. That was always like, if I got up early, it's because I had to, not because I naturally wake up early. I always was kind of a sleepyhead. So that was the immediate obvious shift was I was up early, full of energy. And I suddenly had all this clarity and motivation to get done so many things, like things I had on a to-do list for months and months and months. Suddenly all got done in 1 week. I just was like ready. And I thought, wow, the only thing new is peyote. So I figured like, okay, there's something to this. And after some weeks, I thought, well, maybe I would sit again. I don't know. And then several months passed. I didn't go back to a ceremony like that, but I had started to connect more with the community around the medicine and be invited to sweat lodges. And I started going to the sweat lodge, and that in itself is a very powerful purification ceremony. So I got a chance to learn a lot just by going to the sweat lodge and understanding the power and connection of the elements, of the water, of the fire, so many things. And I just felt really, I couldn't deny there was a connection there for me. And I've always been a very good student. So when I'm into something, I dive in. And so I was there and I started learning a lot. And eventually the second ceremony came and I hesitated very much about going, but people were trying to convince me. And I thought, I don't know, I'll see how I feel. And I never used words or understood anything about like hearing a call. Like, oh, if it calls you, that wasn't part of my language. I didn't have that kind of frame of thought at that time. So, but it was undeniable that the night before the ceremony that's what it was. I felt like there was a call, like a banging on the door, like, you need to be there. And I was like, wow, I can't believe this. Like, I actually feel like I have to be there. So I reached out and they said, we have a seat for you. So I came, and that was the ceremony that changed everything. That second ceremony with the peyote was the one that opened my eyes and my heart to a whole world that I had no idea. It was as if I thought that I kind of knew life, and then something was lifted and I actually saw what was possible. And the music was everything. It was all about the music for me, because in that ceremony they actually had music outside of the water drum, and they invited me to play at some point. And the way that I felt the music that night, it made me fall in love with music all over again, as if it was the first time I was hearing it. And it wasn't that I had ever stopped loving music. I just got so used to having music as my life that I realized at some point I maybe like took it for granted. And having that rush of like, I'm all over in love with this thing, this called music, sound, and the combination and playing together, that I decided at that point, I was like making jokes like, okay, I'm in. If there's a membership fee, a club, a mailing list, like, I want in on it. I just want to be there every time. And within the year, I would say ayahuasca came, and that one was a lot harder for me than the peyote. But I could have never anticipated that the work I was doing at that time went well beyond what I thought was just for me, that I was going to be doing this healing journey. I was also helping heal my family along the way. And through my own transformation, some of my closest friends from a long time that at first were kind of suspicious of what was going on. They were like, what is she into? And did she join a cult, or is she doing drugs? They could not deny the fact that I looked healthier, I looked happier, and I was making things happen in my life. Some things that I always said I wanted to do were finally happening, and other things that I never expected, but obviously were really good, were taking place. So they got inspired and they started asking me questions, and some of them came along, including my family. And then, like, here I am 13 years later, having my own altar and serving the medicine. And that was something I never could have imagined at that time. Like, I was just there. I was just learning. I was doing my work. I was healing. And when I started getting called to sit behind the altar in support of these elders and these masters, I really was from a place of immense humility every time, and just wanting to learn as much as I could and be in service. But I never thought, yeah, I was going to be having my own altar someday. And so it was so crucial, because it changed my entire life from top to bottom. And it completely, one of the most important parts of my life has always been music. And the medicine completely redirected my music, where it was going to go. And now it's a whole thing. It's like, it all goes together. You know, I'm a professor in a university and I teach humanities. I've been doing that for like 11 years or so. And my course, I kind of tried to structure the conversation around ancient temples and teachings and spirituality and what humans have been doing to be able to, outside of what the curriculum is, you know, just kind of help students awaken and open their minds to other ways of thinking that is not so American or just so limited. Now, you know, I teach also on the side. I've been leading workshops for many years around ceremony and plant medicine, around the sacred chants, giving a bit of explanation around the protocols and the rituals and Nahuatl language as I was studying it while I was there in bits. My knowledge is very limited, but I share what I know that I feel can help others. And with music, it just changed everything. And the moment I started singing again, after having not sang for so long, and singing in service to the medicine, everything changed and my career took off. And I never would have expected that, because I was on my way to become some kind of EDM pop princess, and actually, I never wanted to do that. It was just kind of what was in my field, what was around, and what I thought I would succeed at. And I thought that I was having fun with it. But actually, I did get to a point where it felt a little bit meaningless, and I just didn't know where to go with it. And then this came, and it just gave so much meaning to my music, because I am now able to use my music to help people heal and to inspire them. And I hadn't even thought that much about that back then. Like, I didn't have the consciousness of that that was a possibility that I could offer. And through my own journey of the voice and overcoming my fears of singing, now I've even developed a course that I started offering during COVID when people were at home, called the Beauty Way Vocal Healing Apprenticeship. And so I'm helping people overcome their fears of singing and just self-expression in general through the medium of sacred medicine chants, and also teaching them about ceremony and these ways, how to make offerings to help them find healing for themselves and also use their voice in service. And that has been very fulfilling to see my students overcoming their fears and actually doing like pretty amazing things with it thereafter. And to also see my music expand. I never thought when I made my first album, that album Trimu, that I thought was just going to be instrumental. I never thought that it would be as successful as it ended up being, and helping me land some really amazing tours around the world for many years. So now I'm just like continuing to follow the guidance that I'm being given, which has everything to do with the medicine and my connection that continues to deepen with God, with the universe. And even that word, I couldn't use the word God and for so long, because I felt that there was all this separation and disconnect and stigma. But the deeper I go with the medicine, the more it actually connects me and helps me to see what God is. And that's just a word, but it's everywhere. The universe, the divine source, all of it is different. And there are also these other masters, these guides that have been here before us, that are there to help us. So I've even been learning about Jesus Christ in a way that I never connected to before, through the medicine, and removing those walls that I had against a divine masculine master who is here to support all of us if we want to. Just like we have so many, like we have Buddha, like we have Ganesha. I mean, that's one of my favorites deities that I work with. And so that's where for me is like, it's just expansion with spirituality, and seeing that everything has its gift, its medicine. They're all tools, and I personally like to learn more and more about the ones that resonate and have them help me through different processes in life, and also assist me in helping others. So I hope that answers your question.
That was so beautiful, Giselle. Thank you so much for sharing just so many different threads of beauty woven into your story, and the beautiful evolution and unfoldment that is transformation and rising up from the muck and claiming life again and stepping out of victimhood and into victory, and really choosing to commit yourself and remember what it means to be a co-creator with the universe. And I love that journey, and it's such a universal part of spiritual awakening, right? So it's like I fully resonate with that, right? That was a big part of my own journey as well, and to our own empowerment for all of us to be able to claim the truth and decipher all of the noise that we have been conditioned into for most of our lives. And even like the sharing of being so closed in your thinking and what you were open to. It's like after so many years of choosing to be closed and choosing to, stay very, shut off from the opportunities that are presented to us each day. It's like those are the patterns that accumulate. Those are the patterns that then become our way of being and the way that we perceive life. And to break free from those chains of our own mind in that way is such a beautiful process. So just really celebrating that and thanking you for sharing in that way, and really also just for all of the beautiful reflections on your path with the plants and the medicines, because ultimately, how you expressed it was the medicine. I didn't feel the medicine at all. And then I went back into my life and everything was different. And a lot of times people talk about how they feel these great insights or discoveries in the medicine. And then the challenging part for them is going out into the world and activating that, taking action, integrating it into their daily life. But it's such a beautiful experience that you shared where actually like it just happened before you even realized that the medicine had been aligning you, reconnecting the threads of your own ancestral memory, the parts that were disconnected for so long, and then it literally just stayed within you and ready to be embodied in that way. So super, super beautiful. And I just really sweet to get to hear more about your story and for us to get this opportunity to connect. You had mentioned that you have an upcoming course for your Beauty Way apprenticeship starting in October, and just want to make sure that we give the dates for that, and we'll definitely include links in the show notes. Yeah, what are the dates for that?
So the dates are tentatively October 17th. This one is likely going to be a 4-week course. Might be 6, but I'm thinking it's going to be 4. And it's a study of the voice, of music, a little bit deeper. There's always ceremonial and medicine context to what I'm offering. I will have completed just before that the first part of the healing apprenticeship course, which is a 6-week course. So it's kind of a course for people who are just starting out and on the medicine path and also with the voice. So this one's kind of a follow-up for some, but all of them are very much for anyone. Anyone can take it at any level. And within these courses, I offer private sessions. So that's where people can actually go deeper in their study and get a more personalized coaching. So the private sessions are very important for a lot of people. So they're there, and that's always available even before October. But yeah, I'm looking forward to offering these courses in the fall and just seeing more songbirds out there, more people sharing their medicine and opening up their voices. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, I love that. And especially, when you were talking about what it feels like to renew our passions and to like awake and just hear the music so much brighter and more crystallized and within our hearts and souls. And this is literally like the call to value our lives and to choose to cultivate those passions that bring us joy. And so what a wonderful offering. And yeah, if anyone's feeling called to deepen their relationship with the voice, with the sound of creation, with music, check out the link in our show notes that will send you over to Giselle's upcoming course. Thank you so much, Giselle, for being here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me, for inviting me. And it's such a pleasure to connect in this way until we meet each other in person. And thank you for everything that you're doing. It's very beautiful and of great importance for our community to have access to a community like yours, a shop like yours, and all the offerings that you're doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, love. God bless you.
From everyone at the Four Visions Market family, we would like to thank you for listening to our podcast. We really hope that you've enjoyed the conversation and gained many new insights on plant medicines, ancestral wisdom, and much more. Please remember to visit our website at www.fourvisionsmarket.com for more resources and information on plant medicine and spiritual tools. And please don't forget to follow us across social media for regular updates on upcoming episodes. We are grateful for your support and look forward to continuing this path with you all. Until next time, take care, stay present, and stay connected.